Hello and welcome back to the Crafty Corner. I'm Jana and I'm excited to tell you today about the renovations and upgrades to the Funkie Junkie Challenge blog. We have rebranded to become the Funkie Junkie Inspiration Avenue blog. Now, we are bringing you a new challenge today, and this challenge starts today on October 5th and will run through October 18th. We are going to be challenging you to create a project featuring some Tim Holtz inks, distress sprays, and or mediums. So for the new challenge, we are going to be asking you to hashtag all of your fantastic projects with the hashtag the Funkie Junkie. And this can be done on a multitude of social media outlets, Instagram or Facebook for one. So I will leave full links down in the description box so that you can check out the new Funkie Junkie Inspiration Avenue blog. For today's project, I'm going to be featuring some distress spray, inks, and Oxide. But the main feature of my project today is going to be some distress microglaze, and there are a few really cool techniques that we can do with that. If you'd like to see exactly which supplies I'm going to be using, go ahead and pause here. All right, let's head over to the Crafty Corner. Today, we're going to be creating a quick card featuring distress products. I'm going to be starting with some distress Oxide Crackling Campfire, distress ink brushed corduroy, mustard seed, and some carved pumpkin. This is going to be forming the base of our card. My substrate for this card is a piece of specialty stamping Ranger paper. Now, I'm pulling in the craft portion of the media mat, and I'm going to be smooshing out the ink on here. And of course, we need a distress sprayer. Absolutely must-have tool and perfect for inky, drippy backgrounds. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to smoosh out our ink. I'm just putting a bit down onto the mat, giving the ink pad a couple of twists, and that is yielding a beautiful amount of ink onto our work surface. I did decide to double up on the mustard seed. This is a lighter color and tends to get lost when paired with bright colors. Now a good spritz from the distress sprayer, and we are ready to dry, dip, and ink. Okay, that is looking pretty good. So we're going to go in with our specialty stamping paper and take one print, pull it up, and see what we get. I am loving the colors. That is looking pretty good for our first pull. Now I'm going to add a little bit of water to this. I want the ink to start moving, so I'm going to tilt the card, let gravity work in our favor, and start with a nice inky, drippy background. All right, looking pretty good. So next I'm going to go in and dry this with the Ranger heat tool. Okay, here are the results after drying the first layer. Now we're just going to go back in. We're going to continue to dip and tap into the ink puddles and see what we get for our background. And again, I'm going to be drying this off and going back and dipping in for more ink. Now, I'm a little light on the mustard seed and the frayed burlap, so we're going to add a little bit more on the mat. I used my fingers to give that a quick breakup so that we didn't end up with square patches on the background. Here is our completed background. Now we're going to pull in some microglaze and have some fun. Since we stamped on specialty stamping paper, microglaze is going to give us an amazing result when we spread it onto this particular substrate. So I'm going in with a fairly generous dollop on my finger, and I'm just rubbing that over the surface. Now, as you can see, there is an almost immediate change to the colors in our background as I spread out the microglaze. This is very cool. It's lifting off the oxide on there and revealing the bright colors underneath. It is an absolutely amazing reveal, and I love this every time I see it. And again, this was a classic demonstration that I saw from Tim Holtz. Now, to clear off the rest of the residue, I'm going in with a paper towel and I'm just going to buff off the microglaze and finish the reveal on our substrate. The colors are so vibrant and it is so easy to now see all of those wonderful inky layers. Absolute distress magic. Okay, so we're going to be just polishing the rest of this off. I've got a little bit of a patina in that corner up there, so I'm going in with just a touch more microglaze to burnish that off. And again, rubbing with the paper towel. All right, that's looking pretty good. So this completes this portion of the backdrop. Now we're going to be pulling in a stamp set. I decided to pull in stamp set CMS 5. And this is Gothic Tapestry. The detail on this is fantastic. And of course, we're stamping with Distress Archival black soot. So mounting the stamp on an acrylic stamp block, I am going to be tapping down some of the Distress Archival black soot. So we're just going to give this a quick tap all over the surface, and we want to make sure that we have good coverage. This stamp is incredibly detailed, so it's really important that we get all of those little spaces covered. Now, tilting the stamp at the light, we can see that there's a slight shine, and that means that there's ink on the surface. Now, of course, we apply good firm pressure to our stamp, and then we lift it off and see the reveal. All right, let's see how that stamp has turned out. The detail on this one is absolutely fabulous. Now, of course, I need to stamp this one twice. It is just that good. But after inking, I want to reposition the stamp just a little bit, and I don't want any overlap. So we're pulling in a scrap piece of paper towel so that I can reposition the stamp and not have any overlapping lines. All right, line it up, stamp it down, good firm pressure, and let's see what we got. All right, the paper towel did exactly what it's supposed to. We now have a fully stamped background. Very good. Let's go ahead and set this aside for now. Next, I'm pulling in a piece of the Distress Heavy cardstock, and we're going to be stamping with one of the Blueprint Sketch stamps. I'll add the stamp number down in the description box. So, again, stamping with Distress Black Archival ink. I'm going to apply ink all over the maple leaf stamp, and we're going to stamp that out. This is going to be our focal point of the card. For this card, I decided that I wanted to use as many Distress ink products as possible. So here we're going to be adding some Distress Reinkers to give our leaf some color. All right, lining it up in the corner and stamping it down. As always, good firm pressure when we are stamping. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and lift. All right, that works. So it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be because we're going to be adding a bright splash of color. So of course I'm pulling in my Tim Holtz Reinker alcohol ink palette. And of course, to apply the ink, I'm going in with the Ranger Fine Detailer brush. For the colors I will be using today from the Reinkers, we are going to be using some mustard seed, Crackling Campfire, Candied Apple, and a touch of Carved Pumpkin. So I'm going to start with some mustard seed, and we're going to be applying this with the Ranger water brush. I don't really have a plan, rhyme, or reason for color placement. I just want to get the ink down onto the paper, and then I will blend out all of that beautiful color with the water brush. So this is going to take me a little bit of time, so we're going to be putting the rest of this on fast forward. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Now that we have our ink down, it's time to go in with some microglaze over the top of this maple leaf. I want to use the microglaze here as a resist because we're going to be adding some more color to our background. And it just so happens we are adding some Distress Spray Stain, which fits perfectly with our new theme for the brand new Funkie Junkie Inspiration Ave blog. So I'm just going to coat the maple leaf with some microglaze. I'm just using my finger, and then we're going to be going in and spritzing. So I'm just going pretty slow with my finger, just dabbing it on here and there, being super conscious about the points of the maple leaf and just making sure that everything is well covered. I am absolutely loving the vibrancy of the Distress Reinkers here. Okay, that looks like that is just about done. I think we've got some good coverage going on here, but the only way to find out is to start spritzing. Just to be sure, I'm picking up this piece and tilting it in the light, and by the gleam I can see that I've got good coverage all over the maple leaf. All right, time for some Distress Spray Stain. And of course, I'm going to be using some Distress Vintage Photo. So spritzing first with the Distress Sprayer. We can already see that the micro glaze is doing its job. The water is beating up all over the maple leaf. And then adding the spray stain. And again, it's beating up nicely over the maple leaf, so we know that there is nothing contaminating all that beautiful color underneath. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to dab away the extra on top of the maple leaf. That looks good. As the droplets come up, we can see that no staining has been left behind. We have preserved the color of the maple leaf underneath all of that, and we now have a beautiful background of brown. All right, that looks pretty good. Next, we are going to be adding a few droplets of water just to get a more distressed look on that background. A few more drops here and there. Just want to get the ink moving, and then going in with the Ranger Heat tool. All right, piece dry, adding a few more droplets to get more distress going on. The maple leaf has stayed intact and looks pretty darn good. Now, I'm not going to be drying off these droplets. I'm going to be going in with a piece of paper towel, and in this case, we're going to be lifting away some of the distress spray stain. Right away, the paper towel absorbs the ink, and lifting up, we have now got a beautiful splotchy background. Next, we're going to be trimming down this maple leaf using the Tonic Decal trimmer. So, I'm just going to put this into the trimmer, and we're going to cut this down roughly to about 3¼ inches. I'm giving myself a bit of a margin so that I've got room to decal all of the edges. We're going to be aiming for roughly 3¼ all the way around this piece. I ideally would like this to be square, but just as long as I'm falling somewhere between 3¾ and 3½, it's going to look good. So, with the decal trimmer, I don't always cut in the same place because the blade is not the same all the way through, and to get a different look all the way around the edge of the paper, it is important to keep turning the paper around so that you get different patterns each time you cut. Okay, that's good. Only one more side to do. It's definitely looking like we're going to end up somewhere around the 3½ mark by the time I'm done trimming. All right, setting that aside, we've got our focal point, sweeping aside our scraps. Now, for the edges of this, I want to go in with some more Distress Ink Vintage Photo. And to do that, I'm going to be going in with the dabber. Oh, changed my mind. We're going to be going in with some brushed corduroy. That's actually going to work really well. It's a little bit more yellow than the Vintage Photo, so it should pop nicely along the edges. And I'm just going in with the blending brush and some dome foam. All right, pretty good. We can add just a little bit more ink on here. Finish creating the distressing on the edges. All right. That's definitely got a good fall vibe going with the bright colors and the more muted browns going on. Okay, so I am pretty happy with that. Now it's time to start assembling our whole card. So bringing back in the base, and I've got our focal point. Now I'm going to be running some washi tape around the border of the card. I'm using some of the older Tim Holtz washi tape from my stash, and this seems to be the perfect color scheme to go with this card. So we're going to be running this washi tape around the focal point, just around the edges, making sure that we're staying clear of the decal trimmed areas, because I still want those to show, but we do want some washi tape for a little bit of added decoration. That's looking pretty good. So I pulled the washi tape about 1/4 inch away from the edge of the focal point. That way we'd have a nice balance between all of the parts. Okay, last thing I'm going to do with this, we're going to be adding a few foam squares in order to give our card a little bit of dimension. Absolutely love using foam squares to pop up pieces on the card. These particular foam squares I found on Amazon. Okay, peeling off the back of this, and then we'll stick it to the front of our card. That is looking good. All right, just gonna line this up and set it down. Okay, that's looking good. Just a little tap to make sure it's held in place. Now, looking at this, I do want to add just a little bit of bling. I'm going to be adding some of the Halloween Idea-ology droplets, and to apply these, I'm going to be using some Distress Collage Medium. I'm going to be placing a little brown droplet in all four corners of the centerpiece on our card. So, with the glue added, I'm just going to gently place each of the droplets on all four corners. That little bit of added shine is pulling together the fall theme of our card very nicely. All right, a couple more. I decided to go for the second to largest size in the box, so these should pop out quite nicely on our card. All right, that is all of the placement. So next I want to add a sentiment, and to do that we are using Noteworthy CMS 446, and we're going to be stamping Focus on the Good. So pulling in a small acrylic block, we're going to ink that up with some black soot, Distress Archival, and I decided that I want to stamp the sentiment across the maple leaf in the center of our card. Taking the stamp and applying some good firm pressure. All right, we now have our sentiment. So for some finishing touches, I decided I wanted to go in with some more washi tape. I'm using one of the very thin washi tapes, and I'm going to be running that around the border of this card. I decided to go for a light brown washi tape. It's very subtle, and again, it ties in nicely with our fall theme. I've cut each piece just a little bit too long, and I'm just tucking the corners behind the card to give a nice, neat appearance. Okay, that is pretty good. Again, tucking the corners in and pulling out some more tape for the next side. This is a nice, easy process, and adding that border gives a bit more of a centered feeling on this card. So, tearing the piece off, tucking the little pieces behind. Nice and easy. Okay, now let's take care of that one last side. Oh, just a little bit of an adjustment over here, and then we complete our final side. All right, lining this up, getting a bit more tape, placing that down. Yeah, I'm definitely liking the washi tape, and like the double washi tape border is one of my favorite layouts at the moment. So that is good. Now we just tear that off and tuck the last little pieces of tape behind our card. Now, for this card, I had a last minute change of plans. I thought I was done, but then I just had to go in and add a little bit more sparkle to this. I decided to go in with some Distress Foundry wax, and I just tapped that all over the card using a paintbrush, and I used the color Mind. Sadly, I didn't catch this part on film, but you can now see the end results with the heated Foundry wax sprinkled all over the card. Thank you so much for joining me here today for the launch of the new Funkie Junkie Inspiration Ave blog. We greatly appreciate you tuning in, and don't forget to check out the link in the description box to find out how you too can join in the fun over at the new Inspiration blog. And until next time, happy crafting.